thank you to our 3 sponsors for supporting our podcast. Johnny Russell's Art Caterers and Milltown Pies, who offer fantastic catering services, Alexander Grace Law, who provide modern and client-led legal services, and SBE Furnishings, who offer high-quality furnishings and electrical items at fantastic prices.
I'll tell you another funny one, if you don't mind, just a quick one. I played at Lords, and as again, my batting was appalling, and played against Wayne Daniel, who, as you know, the younger lads, I'm sure have heard of him, he's quick. Playing at Lords, first time I played at Lords, and Wayne Daniel had been left out of the West Indies touring team. The West Indies were over to tour England, and he'd been left out. And the West Indies were practising on the nursery end, in the nets at the back of the nursery end, and they came to watch. Viv Richards, Clive, Gordon Greenwich was stood watching Wayne Daniel bowl as though he needed any motivation to bowl at me, you know. And he was coming in, he was running in, and he was coming in, he was like a big gangster running in, you know, it frightened me. So I went out to bat, number 9, and again, we're in all sorts of... And David Lloyd was at the other end, Bumble was at the other end, and this is a true story as I sit here. And David Lloyd came down to me and he said, "Scotty, you'll never have seen anyone as quick as this lad." Just to make me feel better. And my knees went from under me, really. And I had it was early days of helmets. I looked like Torchy the battery boy with this helmet on. Again, you won't remember it, but like I had a motorcycle helmet on. And he said to me, "You'll never have seen anyone as quick as him." And I say, my knees went. And he said, "What you've got to do is pick your bat up early. Get your bat up nice and early. Get ready and be ready for him because he's quick." So I went to the other end and I took my guard and I looked behind me and it was like 300 yards. It seemed about 100 yards back where Paul Downton, the keeper from the slips, were. I was in a little vacuum all on my own. There was no one around me. I had a short leg. And it was all surreal. And he was miles away on his run up and he came running in, pounding. And I'm thinking, pick your bat up. And I picked my bat up and the ball whistled past my ear hole and I never moved. I just stood there with the bat up. And I felt, you feel the wind go past your head. And it went, and then I heard about 2 seconds later, it hit Paul Downton's gloves, and he heard, well ball. And I was still stood there like that with my bat up. And David Lloyd, this is true, came down to me and said, "Scotty, forget that, keep your bat down. I didn't know what to do. Anyway, I was out next ball, and that was that. I walked off, thank God for that. I was out. True story.
And it is, and that guy, the likes of Paul Stanley said, this man is such a character in the story, and they all are 100% true. Stan, can you
100% true.
You remember in those dressing rooms, Stan?
Well, I can, and can I just say to begin with, I don't know whether Adam will edit this or not, but to be on the same podcast as Gary and Chris has made my year, because we don't see enough of either of them, and I know there are reasons for that. We don't see enough of either of them. 2 fabulous guys. Gary was, as has been described already, and I say this even though he didn't like me, a great captain, a great leader, and Scotty was just an astonishing, and still is, an astonishing character. I first met Chris when I played for North Lancashire under-15s against South Lancashire under-15s in the final county trial in 1974 at Old Trafford. George Lowe from Barrow threw up on a length, and that summed up my performance. I dropped a catch, I went for a quick run out and threw it for 4, and I think I got 10 before Les Jackson, who went on, I think, to become a famous Warrington bowler, bowled me out with it. It was an absolute disaster. And there behind the sticks, Scotty, just help me out because my memory's faded a bit. Yeah. I'm guessing you should have played for South Lanc. But I feel you played for Northland.
No, I played against you, I think. I'm sure I was against
you. You did. And if I can just say this, I've never seen Chris before, and the South Lancs had an opening bowler who I'd played against for the school, grammar school. God bless Burnley Grammar School and Mel Saunders. And this bowler was the fastest thing I've ever seen. Bearing in mind at this time, I hadn't played first team cricket, but I did that season. He was the fastest bowler I've ever seen. And the first over of the game, Scotty stood up to him. And we were in the change room saying, "Look at that man. How can he possibly stand up to this beast?" Not only did he stand up, he took catches off the thin edge, he took catches off the thick edge and stumped him. And that's how good Chris Scott was. And it's been very interesting to hear his career, which I did know, of course. I once went to an evening with Barry Richards, Kapil Dev, Imran Khan and Ian Botham, and they got through their careers slightly quicker. But it's absolutely great to hear his career.
Enough for you. Let's move on.
And the stories he tells, the sing-songs we've had, and you've mentioned the politics, Jez. I can't get away from it. Can't get away from it.
Well, we spent a lot of time together, didn't we, Stan, with police games?
On the burglary squad together, Scotty.
Yeah, we detected a murder together, didn't we?
Scotty will be mentioning that, and I think the headline is Lowerhouse cricketers detect gruesome murder, and that's yourself, me, and Jez Hope. And he wasn't even in the police at the time.
No, he wasn't. But we were having a brew at his house at the time.
Scotty, I didn't spoil your stories. Don't spoil mine.
We'll come on to that story. It is an absolute classic. It really is funny. So, Chris, the listeners, they just want to know a bit more. It's so interesting. So you've got to that stage of your career. You've just mentioned there, you're 20. You've smashed your thumb, and we know, Gary and Dooch and Joe Martin want to sing your hands, but in the dressing room, your hands are...
they still are. Their fingers are short. We used to wear chamois leather, wet inner gloves. They were chamois, they were wet and cold wet, because some dressing rooms, you didn't have any warm water. If you get warm water, you would use them, but mostly it's cold water. And so you kept wicket with these wet chamois inners on, which were no good for your arthritis at all. And I broke nearly everything. I can bend my thumb more or less. This one that Imran Khan broke, I can bend it more or less.
Can you still thumb it in, Scotty?
No, I can't throw at all. Rag on.
So, Scotty, he didn't say throw it in, he said thumb it in. But
I thought he said throw it in.
But
don't go there with that.
No, we're not. But Chris used to... Be careful what you say, Scotty, because Joe Martin, he's not as tough as you. He's already in. But anyway, Scotty on cold days, and his fingers would be white. Not necessarily cold days, they would be white because of his injuries of being a pro cricketer. And, I don't know, now we listen to these stories, Chris, maybe showing off a little bit with your collar up, stood up, maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've got to 20. You've realised then that you've got these injuries. How did you?
I just started stuttering a little then, and a bit of confidence dropped a little. And we signed Michael Holding, where it kind of came to a bit of an end. Michael Holding was playing at Rishton in the Lancashire League, and we signed him to play midweek for Lancashire. while he was over, and great bowler, but and. I kept okay to him, but I missed a couple of chances off him early on, and I struggled a little with confidence. My batting was average, and I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I saw it coming, and it resulted in, I think it would have been July '82. My contract was due for renewal, and they sacked me. They released me from contract, which was a real at the time. That was 1980.
I bet that must be so difficult, Joe Martin. As a young wicket keeper, what's your thoughts about that at that age?
Well, it must be soul destroying, especially if you've worked hard at your game for so long. I was just going to say, when you released in 1982, I actually have a book that someone's borrowing at the minute of the Who's Who of Cricketers, 1983, and you're in it. It's got your full address and phone number. It also has Clive Lloyd's full address and phone number in it.
Permission to come in, Jez, on Chris Scott's notifications in cricketing manuals. As you know, Chris joined the police, and I was given the task of looking after him. I'd had Woodworth under my wing. Somehow I managed to get through it. And we were on the burglary squad together, myself and Chris. And I said to him, Chris, I said, the all-time Lancashire Cricket Club almanac's come out, and it's in W.H. Smith. He said, come on. He said, let's go and have a look at it. So we downed pens and pencils and shut the cell door on the prisoner, and we went down to W.H. Smith. Chris gets the book off the shelves. Oh, he said, I mentioned. I mentioned. Page 96 and page 125. Get it up, let's have a look. Page 96 described how he cost Lancashire the game by dropping Ian Botham.
Yeah, correct.
I said, never mind, Chris. I said, never mind. Because he's saying, bloody hell, look at this. Fancy that. Fancy that. And I've got. I said, let's have a look at page 120 odd. Through the leaves, we get to page 120 odd, and Chris Scott was released by Lancashire. An outstanding wicketkeeper. Unfortunately, his ineptitude with the bat cost him his place. How sad. How sad. Lancashire's lost.
Yeah.
Lowerhouse Cricket Club's game and Burnley Police, and therefore the public of Burnley.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks you to say this.
Correct. So, Scotty, let's just go back to, so you've had that sad news. I'm assuming it's at the end of a contract. Your contract.
Yeah. They released me, Bernard Reedy, Andy Kennedy, and Peter Lee, who was a seam bowler. Again, the names, Joe might not know those names, but they were all decent cricketers. And and we all went on the same day. That was it, done. And I was 22. I had a child, my son Craig, and my first wife. I were married at the time, and as Joe rightly said, it was a real difficult moment in my life, really, because in those days, of course, don't forget, like now, there are sports psychologists, there are people who mentor, there are the pros now, they look at careers away from cricket, they develop themselves in other areas. There was none of that in my day. It was still very much a man's sport, it was a drinking, smoking, and you know what, after play, and there was nobody to put their arm around you. You stood or you fell, and that was it. And unfortunately, and saying no excuses, I had my chance, and people amongst us tonight who certainly deserved a chance. I got a chance, but unfortunately, although I did okay for a period of time, I just keep my career going in that. So I was released. I was chucked out. And
I don't think, Scotty, Cracky, you've been there. You've got the memories, and you've seen all that. And it's like when we spoke to Tony Woodworth about his footballing career. We've all played decent levels. We've all done what we've done, but we've not been paid for a period of time as professional sportsmen. So that can never be taken away from you. So from then, you're 22, like you said, Craig used to come down to the club with you, when you came down. And so what did you do from there? What was your...
Well, I was struggling. I had to get a job, of course, because the pay hadn't been great. Anyway, I didn't get a first team cap. I was second team cap, but I didn't get a first team cap. So my salary wasn't... So I managed to get a couple of jobs. I think I worked for Salford Rugby for a while, lottery, in the early days of lottery with bingo and pubs and things like that. And I had a few jobs, nothing spectacular. And a friend of mine was in the police. He said, why don't you try and get in the police? They're really big on sport. So I thought, it wasn't kind of a career calling for me, as it is with quite a lot of people who join the police. But it was a thought, I think a good job, obviously. And the sport was helpful, and sport was a big thing, as you know, Jez, from when you joined.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I applied for Greater Manchester and for Lancashire. They were both recruited. Unfortunately for me, Lancashire were quicker off the mark than Greater Manchester, because I lived in Greater Manchester at the time. And I managed to get into Lancs. And this is a gospel truth. I was sat at home in Manchester one evening, and I'd been accepted, and I don't think I'd started the initial training, or I was early into it. And Stan rang me at home. And I knew the name, but I didn't really remember him too well. And Stan rang me and he said, "I hope you don't mind me ringing you." He said, "But you're coming to Burnley when you get in the police." This is true. Right. I may not remember. And I said, "I don't know, Stan." I said, "I've only just been accepted. I'm only just got my foot. I'm in the early stage." He said, "No, believe you me, you're coming to Burnley." And he said to me, "If you come to Burnley, I play for Lowerhouse. Will you come and play for Lowerhouse if you come?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what it is, Stan. I don't know I'm coming to Burnley, but if I am, I promise you, I'll come and play at Lowerhouse." And that's exactly what happened. And I did get to Burnley. The chief super was a guy called Johnny Wiggum. Wiggum, is that right, Stan? And he was a big cricket fan. And I think Stan got in his ear, and he got me across to Burnley. And I think that's how I came over it. And I never looked back since, really.
That's really interesting, that, Scotty, because that was going to be my next question. I didn't know. I was going to ask you how you came to play at Lowerhouse, and I knew that you've done working at Burnley with Stan. Right. So Stan, you've obviously got into the chief super's ear and got Lowerhouse a fantastic player. What's your recollection of that?
Well, John Wiggum was a very important chief superintendent. He was the head of the Chief Superintendents Association of Great Britain. So it was no minuscule Mickey Mouse policeman. But he had a great love of cricket. He used to go on the police cricket tours. I can tell a great story about him and Andy McNicholas. Sadly, John's long gone. And I got into the police on the back of playing for the police in charity games through my Lowerhouse connections. And there were 36 of us on my intake. And at Hutton, 35 got somewhere entirely different. A Southport lad got Clitheroe, that's all.
Yeah.
And I went to be told where I was. And I could read a post-it upside down on the file. Must be posted to Burnley. Orders. Chief Superintendent Wigan. He wanted a good cricket.
Brilliant.
And I was grateful. I never looked back. And as soon as Scotty came on the radar, John Wigan, Stan, what do you know about this lad? I said, wow. I said, the greatest wicketkeeper I've ever seen. He said, we'll have him. And that was it. Get in touch with him. We'll have him.
And we've never discussed that, me and Stan, before tonight, you know, have we, Stan?
Say again?
I don't think we've ever discussed that before tonight, have we, Stan, how that happened? I don't remember.
Certainly not that I can remember, Chris, but to be honest, it was I just saw it as a matter of fact thing. In those days, sport was very important for the welfare of the troops and a bit of physical activity. And John Wigan was cricket bonkers. He was a hugely influential police senior officer. Enough said.
Yeah. That's
so let me get it right, Stan. We've got, you know, you're in the police. You've got Chief Supers speaking to a police constable. Look, we've got potentially a good cricketer coming in that is clearly going to be a good lad because he plays cricket. We want him to come into Burnley police area in Pennine Division, if it was then. And then you've took it upon yourself. Burnley Division. Right, yeah, before my time. So then you've took it upon yourself, some might say a little bit devious, to add the bit, come to Burnley if you play for Lowerhouse.
Yeah.
No. Chief Superintendent Wigan had told me that he will be coming to Burnley. And like I say, he was a very influential man. He will be coming to Burnley. And I knew Chris only from that one meeting north, east, south. And he was he's a fabulous guy. We know that. He's a fabulous guy then. We know he's a chest puffer, straight back chest puffer. We know that.
I'm not a cap duffer like you.
So, thanks very much, Scotty. That's fantastic. Your career there in first class cricket, you know, so interesting. Gary, have you any observations around that you want to bring up?
I think the obvious one, Jez, would be, you know, in terms of your cricketing career, Chris, who was the standout player who you sort of with or against, who you were on the pitch with at the same time and just did something that you thought, you know, was out of this world or just looked a class above everybody else?
Yeah, from a keeping against a player I played against, Dennis Amos, if you remember him, opening bat for England in Warwickshire, class player, and his bat always seemed about 6 foot wide. You know, when you were behind him, he never looked like he was going to miss a ball. So I had a lot of time for him. And Zahir Abbas, a Pakistani international cricketer who played for Gloucestershire, and he was very wristy. In those days, you didn't see a lot of the wrist. You see it now all the time, the wristy type of players. But he would play with a straight bat, and then at the very last minute, he would use his bottom hand to manipulate the ball away, you know, and with power as well. Very last minute, bringing his wrist into play. So they were a couple of batsmen who struck me. I was fortunate enough to play against the likes of Boycott and Bolton, who were obviously very, very good players. But if I was to put the two that really impressed me would be Amos and Zahir Abbas from my own personal viewpoint. For keeping wise, I kept some very good cricketers. I think Michael Holding probably was. Colin Croft, who was in Lancashire's first team at the same time as me. Flattered to deceive. If he got him in the right frame of mind, he could be lethal, you know, and he could bowl sides out, but he would only turn up every now and then to do that. You know, he had to catch him in the right frame of mind. But on his day, he was as good as but I think Michael Holding would have to. And when he played for us, he was running off a short run most of the time and do it both ways without any change in his action. He would swing it in. He would just, as you know. So they would be the highlights of players I played with.
Nice one.
Yeah, fantastic, Chris. Thanks. And also, you know, we can't forget, you know, you're playing with Clive Lloyd, David Lloyd, and those sort of players as well. It's fantastic. Admitted both Stan.
I'm not sure why he logs onto his computer.
He's a retard. I mean, for somebody who did very well at grammar school, he's on Victor Ludor and board at Burnley Grammar School. Obviously, went to university, rose through. You know, came out of there well qualified. Rose through to the the high ranks of senior waiter and catering officer in Burnley Nick. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
Are you talking about me?
Before me, you and Stan, go on to games that we can talk about, or little stories that happened. It's just, Joe Martin, have you got anything you want to just bring up before you listen to these old stories about coming to Lowerhouse and after his first class career?
I speak to a lot of people I think I'm slightly different to the majority of the other younger players at the club, in that I talk to a lot of the older players about what used to happen. And one of the people I always talk, well, two of the people that I usually talk to are Keith, Rusty, and my uncle Ian, Shez. And they both say, if I were picking a Lowerhouse best 11, Joe, you won't get in it, because Chris Scott was the greatest wicket-keeper we've ever had.
I'm not sure about that, Joe. But...
Well, I am. I don't think you've seen me keep. I've got lots of bruises on my chest. What was it like, sort of transitioning from playing professional cricket to move into playing with Stan?
Yeah, I also played midweek cricket for Burnley Police up at Townley. Playing first class cricket, like you say. I had a year out, to be fair, where I'd gone back into league cricket before I came, but it was difficult. You used to, you walk on Old Trafford, it was like walking on concrete, and your spikes would cut through the turf as though even the outfield was hard. And you come playing back in the leagues, and there were uncovered wickets in those days. We didn't have covers like we have now, and it was like playing on a mud bath sometimes. So just from the game perspective, I've grown up on that, like we all had, so that wasn't too bad. But I did find myself, as I said earlier, I just needed a bit of something to needle me, to get me up for some games. I was never any good at just going. I couldn't just set my stall out, and just not go through the motions, but do it nice and easy and make it all look so simple. I was never good at that. I'd lose concentration. I wouldn't be. I needed either to get myself up, because if it was a big game, we're playing Burnley, I'd always get myself up, so if it was a big game. But if we're playing Church on a wet and windy afternoon up at Church, I just need that bit of aggravation, Joe, just to get me in the game. And I'd have to create it sometimes by being a bit obnoxious to the batsman, or someone had set me off, or Stan had set me off. Someone had set me off, and that would get me going. So I wouldn't say that I found it easy. I didn't. I'd like to think I did okay, but I don't think Lowerhouse, if I'm really honest to you all, I don't think Lowerhouse saw the absolute was capable. But I'd like to think whenever I walked out, I did try my best, but I sometimes just needed that extra bit of motivation to get me through it. But I enjoyed every minute of it. I mean, the people we're mentioning, your Uncle Ian, who's a lifelong friend, Rusty, Alan Olden, Roger Bromley, Brian Holmes, Jez, Gary, friends for life. I saw Gary in Fence Gate a few weeks ago. He were up north, and it was just like stepping back in time. And there were tremendous people I met at the club, and the supporters as well, of course. Some great characters who come and watch week in, week out. And we had some rough times, but they were there every week, giving us a bit of grief sometimes, to be fair, when we deserved it. Really good people.
Yeah, great joy. It is. It's none of us understand that transitioning from professional to amateur. Stan, have you anything to comment on around that side?
Yeah, I think so, Jez. I mean, Chris, you've sold yourself short there. I can understand why you felt sometimes you may be not have been 110%, but you were never below 98. I never came off a cricket match with you, no matter how we, and thought that Chris Scott hasn't given you. You were an absolute 100%. But I do know that you were particularly harsh on yourself. On the times that you packed in, I remember asking you, and you said, I can't achieve the heights that I've previously achieved. And I think we can all appreciate that, Chris. Because
I got frustrated, Stan. I did get frustrated. We've
all been there. We've all thought, for instance, maybe in Jez's case, that ball would have bowled him out 2 years ago instead of hit for 4. In my case, he got me out. And it will come to everybody, and the balancing act is knowing and appreciating it. I think you were particularly harsh on yourself, Chris, as you always have been.
Yeah, I think you're right. I am that way. I am. Whatever I do, I play golf. Talking to Joe just a minute ago about golf, and I'm the same at golf. I sometimes have a mindset that I'm a professional. You know, play off 18. You know, I'm rubbish. But I have that harsh. I'm so hard on myself, and I think that's fair comment that time. I was very harsh.
Well, you are, Chris, because you tried everything after cricket: swimming, cycling, needlework and
failed at them all.
Needlework and crochet. You've done a lot.
So Gary, I know you've come in. We had a conversation over the last few podcasts about your captaincy, and what is your memory? No, Chris is still with us, but what's your memory of Chris at Lowerhouse and your thoughts about him now?
Well, I think when I came to Lowerhouse 90, and I think obviously Chris had a period in the 80s playing, and then came back and played a couple of years, early 90s. I think you were captain, Jez. And so I think I played, and Iggy had been playing, but you'd seen other keepers around the league, and they were certainly generally, obviously, a lot higher standard than I'd seen sort of previous cricket playing. But then Chris comes and plays with us, and it's another level again, up obviously, professional cricketer, but just. And they say it about all good wicket keepers, I guess, how natural and easy they make it look, and you don't hear the ball hit the gloves and all this sort of carry on. But there was a funny tale we were talking earlier about him saying, getting wound up about something and didn't like people batting out the crease. And I remember we played Aslington, and it was a rain-affected game. We got a half-decent score, but suffered because rain had come halfway through it in. And Aslington were heading for a victory. Mickingham came in, they didn't want so many. And, he likes to wander down, doesn't he? He likes to sort of get medium pacers, think he would put them to the sword a bit. And Stanley were bowling. And Chris, he's obviously walking out with his crease, Mickingham, not having this. And he says to other end, just tell your skipper to put showers on. And they're like, what are you on about? Tell your skipper to put showers on. I'm coming up to wicket. So Mickingham's like fuming. He's obviously not right happy with this. And I think it might have been second or third ball after you said that. Sure enough, stumped down leg side off Stan. Yeah, it was unbelievable. Never seen anything like it. Obviously, Stanley not that quick, and just a privilege to play. And I think I wish he'd have stayed in that side a lot longer. I think. Yeah,
thanks, Gary. I do remember that actually. Now you meant, yeah. That was a little bit like that, trying to make things happen, I suppose. Where I could, influence things. The trouble is with cricket, as we know, it's a non-contact sport, isn't it? And we've all been there where you just wish you could, throw your gloves off and do a bit like ice hockey and have a rumpers. You can't do it, so you're a bit restricted in what you can do.
Or a tackle or whatever. It is. I mean, that is right. You've just said there, Chris, a sentence, just trying to make something happen. And that is something that, and me and Joe Martin and Ben Heath and other players at the club, that is so important. Let's just make it happen.
If it goes wrong, Jess, you can let yourself down, let your team down. But I'd rather try and make something happen and take the consequences than just sit back and let things happen. If we had a score on the board, I'd like to back us to win, because I'd try and drag us over a line. I'm not saying that to blow my own trumpet, but that's how I honestly felt. I'd drag us over that line, if I could.
Yeah, certainly fielded second. Joe Beneducci, I'm sure you've got a few observations on Chris's career at Lowerhouse.
It's just great to hear everybody talk so positively about him. I never played in the first team with him. He won't remember this, but I do think I played a couple
seconds
games with him when I was very, very young.
Very young.
Did you play a few second team games right at the back end?
I finished in seconds. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Fielding.
So that was great. I enjoyed that. That was a really good time.
I remember you, Joe. I definitely remember you, playing at that time.
Yeah, it was. It was so, so inspirational around those games and the periods. And it is. We all come and go, and it's an amateur sport, and that's why we come and go from it. But it was fantastic. Stan, have you any thoughts before we start looking at games that Chris has played in and some stories about his career?
Well, I have, Jez. The thing that really strikes me about this is Joe and yourself are heavily involved in things, and I know for the various reasons that Gary and Chris aren't. But what a great shame it is that these two Lowerhouse stalwarts, for personal reasons and very valid reasons, are so far away. Because these lads are what Lowerhouse Cricket Club is all about. 2 good cricketers. Scotty was exceptional. 2 great Lowerhouse people, 2 great team people, 2 fighters, 2 stalwarts that would die for the club. And this has been a wonderful experience tonight on this. And I hope we can do it again. I know with things to talk about, but I just wanted to get that in.
Done, yeah.
Cheers, Stanley.
Agree.
Gordon, send Morehouse to save the house.